It's been 45 years since Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Stephen King's The Shining hit theaters.
Here's Johnny!
But its story still feels eerily relevant to our modern day. The story uncovers how isolation and violence can bend and even pierce time itself, grabbing people by the darkest parts of themselves and pulling them down like quicksand. But if we look a little closer, we might just notice that this cycle the Overlook has pulled the Torrance family into isn't as unfamiliar to us as we might hope. So what is it that makes The Shining still resonate even all these years later? And what can we take away from this story for our own lives? Let's dive in. The Shining deals with the idea of isolation across multiple planes. There's, of course, the literal isolation. The Torrance family travel to the Overlook Hotel, nestled far up away in the Rocky Mountains, for Jack's new job as the caretaker during the off-season. Though it's implied it's past its heyday.
We had 4 presidents who stayed here. Lots of movie stars.
Royalty?
All the best people.
It seems that the hotel is still in regular, normal use. But everyone that's there now seems to be in a hurry to get out. In the beginning, we assume this is just because they're contract workers who, of course, have no interest in continuing work when they're not getting paid. But as time goes on, we get the feeling that those who work at the hotel know that it's not the kind of place where you want to be the last one around.
It's amazing how much activity's going on today.
The last day's always very hectic. By 5 o'clock tonight, you'll never know anybody was ever here.
While the hotel is beautiful and grand, the emptiness in a place that was clearly made to be filled with people is immediately off-putting, intensely highlighting the isolation of these characters. The hotel has a literal maze outside, but is also a labyrinth of a sort inside as well.
Come and play with us, Daddy, forever and ever and ever.
This kind of winding and weaving works both to create separation and to entrap people within it. Even the fun of a hedge maze begins to wear off quickly when you begin to have the realization that you really don't know how to get out. There's also a rising fear as the deeper you go, the more difficult it becomes to find your way back out again. While we may not often find ourselves in these kind of literal mazes, we can very easily find ourselves pulled into digital ones. In a similar way, we're lulled in by the beauty and fun at first, only to find ourselves feeling trapped. This kind of isolation can change us, alter the way we think about ourselves and behave.
For some people, solitude and isolation can of itself become a problem.
Being in the hotel pushes Jack into diving into the worst sides of his nature. Solitude can magnify so many issues, as one becomes disconnected from their own humanity and that of others. People come to no longer see the other people with them in the labyrinth as human beings, but instead obstacles and opponents. The film also contends with the matter of choice, or lack thereof, of getting pulled or pushed into this kind of situation. Danny has zero choice. He's just a small child going along with his parents, and his stated desire not to go is ignored. Wendy is just hoping for the opportunity to have some positive alone time with her family where they can relax and hopefully bond. Jack, on the other hand, is not only the one that makes the choice for the family to go out to this hotel in the middle of nowhere, he also makes the choice to isolate them further. He takes the batteries out of the radio, the only connection they have left to the world outside of the hotel. Jack's disconnection from true humanity, and his desire to erase others, grows as he becomes more involved with the phantoms in the hotel. One big difference between the film and the book on which it's based is how Jack is portrayed. In the book, he's rather sympathetic. Most of the evil that happens is outside of him, truly the work of the hotel itself. But Kubrick was more interested in the human element driving the evil. Here, Jack isn't just being affected by something, he's actively participating in it. Kubrick was always interested in digging into this element across his films. What causes some people to be drawn deeper into the darkness, even when it's obviously dangerous? In The Shining, that's explored through the cycles we see play out. In this film, eras bleed together and time is simultaneously frozen and coexistent.
When I came up here for my interview, it was as though I'd been here before.
This is because the hotel itself, and everyone in it, seems to be trapped in a cycle of existence. The film's name, The Shining, is taken from the power that Dick realizes that Danny also shares.
People who shine can see, just like they can see things that haven't happened yet. Sometimes they can see things that happened a long time ago.
The Shining allows people like Dick and Danny to experience the past, present, and future, and also to form connections across time and space.
How'd you like some ice cream, Doc? My grandmother and I could hold conversations entirely without ever opening our mouths.
Danny's hyperconnection is in direct contrast to his father's extreme disconnection, and their different responses to this are key, as we'll discuss in a moment. The time cycle of the hotel sees people becoming trapped within its walls eternally, either living out their existence as ghosts, or being reincarnated into beings that will come back to feed the hotel again and again.
You are the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I've always been here.
We come to find that even Jack's supposed writing work is part of an endless cycle. While it seems like he's been working away this whole time, eventually we come to find out that he's just been repeating the same line, "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy," over and over again. While this has the obvious, more relatable connotation of becoming dull due to being overworked, Jack hasn't been writing his book at all, but he has become dulled to any sensations outside of the work that the hotel calls on him to do. That brings us to the cycle of violence and ever-present memories of dark histories. The hotel was built on a Native American burial ground on stolen land, and that violence has continued to reverberate through its walls. In Jack, Wendy, and Danny, we see three different angles of violence, the pull of power, and the choices one must make. Already a quietly negative force, Jack is ready and willing to completely give himself over to this mysterious hotel and its wishes to bring out the worst version of himself. As the father figure of the family, he represents power and force, and how it can be used for evil. While he's certainly pushed to a new level by the isolation and the hotel itself, harming his family isn't new for Jack. We learn that he's already hurt Danny quite badly previously in a drunken rage, and given how scared she is of him when he's angry, we can imagine that Wendy has been on the receiving end as well.
What sort of injury did he have?
On this particular occasion, my husband just used too much strength and he injured Danny's arm.
But Jack refuses to take any responsibility for any of his actions. And not only that, he accuses everyone else of being the real problem.
I did hurt him once, okay? It was an accident. A little had thrown all my papers all over the floor. All I tried to do was pull them up.
Jack is a perfect on-screen example of Darvo in action, the manipulation tactic used by narcissists and psychological abusers to evade accountability. Darvo stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. And we can see Jack pull this into play multiple times. He is constantly denying any wrongdoing, attacking Wendy for even bringing it up, and then flipping the situation to make it seem like she's the one in the wrong.
Wendy, I have let you up my life so far, but I am not gonna let you this up.
While the hotel might be pushing Jack towards evil actions,
I see you can hardly have taken care of the business we discussed.
that threat of violence was always present. We can also see this in Grady, who is also noted to have seemed normal before butchering his entire family at the hotel.
But I corrected them, sir. And when my wife tried to prevent me from doing my duty, I corrected her.
The hotel didn't make Jack dangerous. It just gave him a venue in which to fully unleash his inner evil. Through his continual refusal to accept responsibility for his own actions and choices and their consequences, he's already trapped himself in a cycle of failure and anger well before the family made their way up to the hotel.
My goddamn soul. Just a glass of beer.
Wendy, having been trapped under Jack's thumb, has become adept at ignoring danger and pushing down her own feelings in the hopes of avoiding retribution. Even as she comes to accept that something really is wrong, and that Jack is very much not going to help, and in fact is a major part of the problem, she has a difficult time deciding what she should do.
I just need a chance to think things over.
You've had your whole life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
It's only when she comes to understand how much danger Danny is really in that she decides that she's going to do whatever it takes to save him, even if that means having to go up against Jack. Danny sits at a crossroads between his parents' natures. He has Jack's penchant for outbursts, likely due to being on the receiving end of them, but he also has his mother's caring side.
It's his mother. She interferes.
While Jack immediately gives in to the whispers and wills of the hotel, young Danny has been fighting against letting himself be taken over since before they even arrived. We learn early on that Danny has an imaginary friend named Tony.
Is Tony one of your animals?
No, he's a little bit that lives in my mouth.
Does Tony ever tell you to do things?
I don't want to talk about Tony anymore.
While he says he's a young boy, when Danny speaks as Tony, it's with the voice of a creepy old person.
Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
Because of Danny's shining ability, it's possible that he's connecting with a ghost that exists across multiple ages, as we see happen with others. Danny is slowly pulled in by Tony in the hotel. But, unlike Jack, it isn't straightforward. Danny fights back, and this causes things to become jumbled. Even the threat they compel out of Danny is backwards.
Red rum. Red rum.
And unlike Jack, Danny's good side is able to hold on and fight its way back to the surface just in time. When we're dealing with horror from all sides, even from people and places that should be safe, it can begin to feel like it's impossible to even imagine a way out. But where there's a will, there's a way. As terrifying as it is, Wendy fights back and begins to make her escape with Danny. It's not an effortless kick-ass battle, but instead a very real feeling fight against the man she thought she knew and loved. Devolved into even more of a monster than she had thought possible. She realizes that she can't save or stop him, so she must save herself and her son from him.
Your wife appears to be stronger than we imagined, Mr. Torrance. Somewhat more resourceful. She seems to have got the better of you.
At the beginning of the film, the family briefly talks about the Donner Party.
They got snowbound one winter in the mountains. They had to resort to cannibalism in order to stay alive.
This is a setup for the hotel cannibalizing its guests in order to survive, pulling in intermediaries like Jack to create blood sacrifices to keep all of whatever this is going. But really, it's Wendy whose options most closely align with the actual horror of cannibalism. The Donner Party didn't eat each other for funsies or because it made them feel powerful. They were trapped in a horrifying situation where they had to do whatever they could to at least keep some of them alive.
You mean they ate each other up?
They had to, in order to survive.
Wendy has to make this choice that is incredibly difficult for her, especially given the psychological torment that Jack has put her through to make her think that she needs him. But she finds her strength, chooses to fight for herself and her son, and is able to escape the Overlook and Jack. Jack, on the other hand, fully succumbs to his most violent, evil nature, and does get his wish to stay in the hotel forever. Frozen in time, literally and within the photograph from 1921, suggesting either that he's a reincarnation of that 1921 guest, or has just been absorbed into the hotel's world like the others. As we discussed in our video explaining The Shining's ending, the ending of the film differs quite a lot from the end of the book. In the book, the hotel itself is destroyed as it burns down after a boiler explosion. There's a reference to the hotel almost being burned down in the film. Grady tells Jack that one of his daughters almost burned the place down, and he corrected her behavior.
One of them actually stole a pack of matches and tried to burn it down.
In the film, however, the hotel, like Jack, only freezes, which means this cycle is only, at most, paused until it thaws out and begins again. Even nearly a half a century later, The Shining still works as a terrifying warning to not get trapped in the cycles of our own worst nature and what has come before, but to instead find ways to nurture and empower the better sides of ourselves. Just because violence and hate have been parts of our past doesn't mean that we have to carry it into the future. Holding on to the good within ourselves and helping others do the same is the only way we can keep ourselves from becoming trapped in our own personal overlooks forever. That's the take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.